Okay, welcome to our Monday morning, September 12th, 2022 strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present. It is 9 o'clock, and so we will get started. We're supposed to be starting with Vicki Dalton. Is she?
She should be here. I'll go double check.
Okay. So we will see if we can locate
One more minute.
there she is. I was starting right on time, Vicki, sorry.
Oh, come on, I was on Todd time. For those of you who have been around a long time, you know what that means.
Okay.
You know what that means.
So I just want to make sure that you scooch in so you can be seen on the Zoom as well.
Okay, where do you want me? Right there?
That's good. Yeah. Okay. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are starting with you this morning. So
Great.
Thank
What do
you
you
for joining
guys
us.
want to know? So this is second round on this particular item, so
So I was not here last week. I
Okay.
apologize. I was traveling for county business with the Air Force. And so can you just give me a brief?
Sure. So really quick, the legislature included a proviso in the budget to provide $2.5 million worth of funding to improve and expand voter registration and voting in jails. There is no additional bill that goes with it that provides instruction, just what was in the proviso. So those counties that have detention facilities are getting together and trying to come up with processes to improve voter registration and being able to actually cast ballots while incarcerated, because people who are in those detention facilities are not all convicted felons under the control of DOC. They are people who are still either not convicted or not under DOC control. We have the expectation that there will probably be legislation in the future that will set specific processes and procedures. And so, Spokane, my office, along with several other counties, are working together to come up with procedures that are actually going to be functional and effective, keeping in mind that for counties across the state, their detention facilities are under a great deal of stress as a result of the impacts of COVID, the impacts of staffing problems. So in Spokane, we've already managed to implement a few minor changes that have significant impact. So for ordering voter registration forms, it's now just an item on the commissary. So that took just a few hours of programming and it's done, and it's a very simple and elegant solution. So we wanted to apply for this grant primarily to pay for two things. One is the production of videos that would be loaded onto the tablets that the inmates get after about 5 to 7 days of being detained in the detention facility. So even if Spokane is not the county that creates the videos, because we were going to be the lead in that, the other counties will pick that up and create those videos, and then we'll just use them. And then the second thing was, if there was going to be any overtime for the jail, especially during the balloting process, then we would have been able to recover that cost. So last week, there was not a great deal of interest in applying for this grant or approving the application for this grant. And you know what? If we don't get the grant, we're still going to go forward with those things that we can do, because this is a statewide effort in conjunction with many of the other counties.
Thank you. Right here. Thoughts on I wasn't here last week, so I don't know. I didn't watch the video to know what the thoughts were.
Right. I wasn't supportive of it last week, and I'm still not supportive of it this week. I think we have a process in place that works, so I'm comfortable with continuing that way.
Yeah, and I'm in the same position.
That's it. Just saying that we will continue on, and we have a very coordinated and collaborative work group among the counties, including with the managers of the detention facilities. So we appreciate their assistance, and we are being very aware of the constraints that our detention facilities are under.
Yeah, I guess that
They're being respectful
would be
of that.
part of my concern is that, and I see Mike Sparber's come on, but I know that, you know, we are severely understaffed at the jail. And so that would be my concern, that if it's not state law at this point in time, you know, that there are opportunities that, you know, they can register to vote, you know, through, you know, things that they're already doing, that's my concern, you know, with it at this point in time.
Yeah, and the staff at the jail, coming up with the idea of using it as just a commissary item was just the most elegant and innovative solution possible.
It seems pretty easy to do.
It is, and again, it didn't really cost anything, and it won't take much effort on an ongoing basis, which is really what we're trying to look for, are those things that are going to be highly effective but low impact, because our expectation is there will be a bill in the future, and we would rather have input into what's going to be included in that bill than get something created that doesn't function for any of us, whether it be the jail or whether it be the elections office.
Thank you. So Mike, do you have a comment?
No, just that, as I expressed, we'll be accommodating if the county wants to move forward with it over to detention services. It doesn't sound like it's a bill, there's a bill for it yet. So it's just kind of a preemptive move on our part. So we certainly will be of help if we can at the jail. But like you said, you know, we're looking for a pathway forward on this. It doesn't require a lot of staff's time or effort, and if it could be handled at the lowest level, then we'd certainly be supportive.
And I guess I would just say that, you know, if there is a bill coming forward, that, you know, we make sure that we're in coordination with Mike to try to help guide what that, you know, does for detention services and staffing. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you. So next we've got Tony Hall. Is Tony here?
Yep.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Tony. Welcome. And I'm happy
Good
to
morning.
share.
Yep. This is Frank Cervantes, our newest senior project manager, project management team.
Very good.
This is going to be his project, but I'll be kind of taking the lead during this brief.
Okay.
So you guys should all have the business case before you, and side note, all projects that go through the project management department will now have a business case attached to them to give you a very high-level overview of what we're doing. So any comments on these going forward, please let us know.
Just a second, let me see if we can find the.
That's it.
Got this one here.
Tried to make it one page, but it's turned into two.
Was that a
Let's just see.
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5.
All right, so in a nutshell,
Just a sec.
yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just a 2-page.
I don't know.
I memorized it.
Word for word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yep. And for context too, we have Ben, who is with the firm that we're planning to work with, just as you guys have any specialized questions, he's on to answer those.
And
Appraisers from Historical Research.
He was gonna be calling in at about 9:15.
I don't anticipate many questions, so I will start with the high-level overview. Really, this firm reached out to Gina. Gina forwarded over to me. I investigated, looked at some resources. This seemed like something that we could take advantage of. In a nutshell, this is just a company that comes through, does an investigation on historical claims. So over the last 60 years, are there any properties that we've owned that we have paid money to maintain, clean up, that we can be reimbursed for? So that is what they're doing on all of our properties we've owned. That's what we plan for them to do. And the fee structure for this is contingency. So we don't pay them anything until we reclaim funds back. So there's really two parts to this. The first one is discovery, going in, are there any claims that we are worth the squeeze? The second part is actually working with the insurance companies to reclaim the money that we get back. So we are 0% obligated to any funds until we actually go after any of the claims. So as you can see on this business case, there are some counties and cities within Washington State. So the city of Hoquiam had a high 7-figure recovery, Lewis County, 7-figure recovery. And Mark, Lewis County was the one you talked to, or?
Yeah, I spoke with Lewis County. They were totally supportive of this. They had great experiences with this. Didn't think it was a big lift for their prosecutor's office either.
And no negative feedback, correct?
No.
That was one of the biggest points that we discussed with Scott.
So how far back, you said 60 years, so how far back can they go or?
I believe Washington State, Ben is the expert on this, but I believe Washington State, there is really no limitation on the time frame that we've owned it. Ben, do you have an answer on that?
Sure. Nice to meet everybody. So we want to look for policies written before 1986. And then the policies that we're looking for are occurrence-based policies. So as long as the insurance company is still in business, you can make a successful tender. We've located policies as far back as the 1920s for insurance companies that are still around.
So so this is going after the insurance company, not the former property owners, is that correct?
That is correct. So we are not going to be pursuing liable parties. We may pursue a liable parties insurance policy, but we are not talking about a private right of action where you would go out and litigate against a liable party that caused contamination. And another point, at current, the county is with a risk cooperative. So you join in your insurance with other counties in the state. We are not going to be pursuing any of those risk cooperative policies. These are policies that the county purchased before you joined a risk cooperative.
So this was really to get your guys' feedback a little bit, just keep you in the loop. We will be coming back whenever we do get recommendations to get your guys' point of view on a path forward on those recommendations.
Mr. Amicio?
Chairman Cuney, my understanding is that the company that you would be hiring, the company here, is going to be researching all insurance policies that anyone may have that have a bearing upon environmental contamination that the county's been involved in. So that if we've paid out some money and we find out that this particular company also involved in it, we can look to their insurance company to reimburse us all or a portion of what we paid out. The company that we're talking about, they do the research of the existing insurance policies. Once they determine the policy, it's my understanding, and please correct me, that if the insurance company doesn't want to pay, then the county has the option to sue that insurance company in court. That was my understanding. And Mark, please correct me if I'm mistaken. And Tony, please correct me, but I think that's my understanding. So an example would be the Wilbur Vault that we purchased. Spokane County purchased the Wilbur Vault. When we purchased it, it was contaminated. The then Board of County Commissioners decided they didn't want to initiate any litigation against the prior owner. This particular company is going to research the prior owner to see if they had an insurance policy. And if they did, then they're going to come back to the county and tell us, and then, and we'll try to negotiate with that insurance company to get them to financially participate in the cleanup of the Wilbur vault that we were engaged in. And if they will not do it, then the county commissioners can determine if you want to initiate litigation in the appropriate forum to make that particular insurance company pay their proportionate share of the cleanup cost at the Wilbur vault. So please correct me, Tony, if I've misstated what this is all about.
Nope, that's correct.
And the reason I know about this is that Mark and I were involved in the initial dialogue on this many years ago. The county's responsibility, and that's why Casey and Mark are here, is we have a responsibility to kind of work with this company to share with them the various sites where the county has been involved in some sort of environmental cleanup. That might be through the treasurer's office in a tax foreclosure sale, or in the purchase of a particular property like the Wilbur vault that we're talking about.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we understood what the concept was.
If I could just interject one thing, everything you said makes perfect sense and is one of the pathways that we would pursue. My company has been doing this for about 21 years, and with our guidance, we have not had to have a client sue an insurance company in more than 10 years. So in addition to finding these policies, in addition to collateralizing policies that might be for another policyholder, we have a great deal of experience with these insurance companies, and we use that experience to help the county, our client, as well as their legal counsel, to tender these claims and obtain coverage without the need of litigation or aggressive posturing. That's not to say that this is a guarantee that you won't have to do that. Of course, past performance is no guarantee for future work, but our goal is that our clients do not have to pursue litigation.
I would also note, if we did pursue litigation, there may be statute of limitations issues that could come into play on some of these claims, potentially.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, one other thing that Mark and I learned in dialogue with this company has partnered with other environmental law firms who are very familiar with the uniqueness of moving forward in the event you have to bring any sort of litigation. And so I think one of the other opportunities here is, if we get to the point where we need to involve other law firms, Mark and the prosecutor's office have an opportunity to work with someone who really has expertise in this particular area. And I think, Mr. Evans, that's part of this proposal, if I'm correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Yep. In the business case, we do have that factored into the cost section, but again, that would be talking about phasing, that would be in the second phase of this after discovery.
And so did we need to go out for a request for proposal? I mean, they solicited us, but do we need to do that before we?
Yeah, so what you guys will see, no action needed today. Next week, we plan to have a sole source resolution to you guys on next Tuesday for the consent agenda. And we're doing sole source, University of Washington, WSU, and I believe Clark County as well did sole sources. So there is precedent for it.
Other questions or comments?
Nope.
Very good.
Thanks,
And
Ben.
we were just hired by the Pierce County Library as a sole source as well. That was about 3 weeks ago.
Great, thank you. And Ben, can you state your name and title for the record? I apologize, I should have asked that to start with.
Sure thing. My name is Benjamin Scott Pariser. I am a principal at Historical Research. Historical Research is headquartered out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and I am here just outside of Seattle and Mercer Island, Washington.
Great, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's funny how that's in the first meeting.
Very good, welcome. Morning. I'm gonna let you all state your name and titles for the record.
Derek Villar, Water Resources Technician.
Good morning, my name is Rob Lindsay. I'm the Environmental Services Administrator, Public Works.
And Ben Bradabo, the Water Programs Manager for Public Works.
Very good, I know with some title changes and stuff, I'm like, I'm not gonna try to do that for you, so thank you. Okay, so Ben, it looks like I'm not sure who's leading off, but we'll let you go ahead and start.
Yeah, so thank you. 2 items today. So we got, one is the first one, we'll cover the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District budget. And then the second item is to talk about the Board of Appraisers results that has a public hearing for tomorrow. So for the budget, this is just an annual presentation of how the money will be spent for the Flood Control Zone District. The goals generally maintain operations. There's 2 big capital projects that are happening this year and into next year with funding from the state and then one from ARP. And so those are 2 big projects. But in addition to that is to keep the system running, lake monitoring, aeration system that runs, and then upgrade the alum system that will be used in the future. The water quality monitoring is done 13 times a year in the summertime. And this is coordinated with the advisory board. So we'll have a presentation tonight to the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District Advisory Board to present them this information as well. And then another piece that the advisory board is very interested in is putting together the historic data and looking at water quality in the lake and how things are doing with all the different activities, and making sure that we're on the right track. And then the final one is the state support for dam safety is working on the dam safety. There's some issues with the dam at the south end of the lake and making sure that that's safe and well maintained. And actually there's an effort to look to decommission it. So has been ongoing for a number of years. Next slide. There's probably the key one is the no increase in the total assessment. And so the next topic is to talk about how the assessment is generated. But at this point, the advisory board is not interested in increasing the assessment for the property owners there. And so we're not looking to do that. But the key items there again is how to deal with the alum system, the water quality system that's there, is how to deal with that offline and do some work. And then the capital project that is funded by the state, we'll be spending that and working through that. And then the ARP project is a big piece as well.
So what are those 2 projects gonna do for water quality?
So the Newman Lakes has a system that adds oxygen to the bottom of the lake and also adds alum, which is aluminum sulfate, to bind up with phosphorus. And so both of those systems were installed decades ago and are in disrepair. The alum system is fully non-functional. And so these 2 projects will essentially replace both the oxygen and the aluminum system to make them back fully functional. So, and that will happen through this year and then into next year.
And then with, how does the future funding for that work to ensure that it doesn't go into disrepair again?
Right, and so that'll be funded through the assessment, through the annual assessment of property owners around the lake. So which is the discussion for later as well, but it's very similar to that. So property owners either on the lake or nearby are assessed to fund the project.
Ben, I was asked a question, so just along the lines to piggyback on Commissioner Keeney's question, the existing infrastructure that's in the lake, is that going to just be left there or will that be removed from the lake?
So it will be removed.
It will be?
Yeah, so there's the large species cone, which is a big, I don't know, as big as this room kind of thing. So a barge to go out and extract that. And then some of the lines that are used for sending oxygen and alum there will also be extracted. So that'll be the part of the project will be remove the old equipment and then put in the new equipment as
Okay.
in the same contractor or contract would be to do both.
Thank you.
Next slide. One of the key pieces here is alum costs have increased as the commodity has increased, and so we're planning to do a surface treatment instead of using the in-lake infrastructure. We're planning to do a surface treatment again next year, and the budget accounts for that. Water quality sampling costs have increased, and it accounts for that. The salaries are essentially one full-time equivalent, so that's how the district is managed by the county. There's several staff that work on it. Derek is the person that spends most of his time on that, and but others, my involvement as well. So county staff is funded, and then the capital grant, it doesn't allow for, the state capital grant doesn't allow for reimbursement for county staff time, but the ARP funding does, so a bit of a difference there. And then increasing, a little bit of increase to the fund balance at the end of the year. There's three risks here at the end, as you're well aware, is challenges with costs from vendors bidding. We have a project out, part of the capital grant is out for bid right now, expecting bids this week. And so we'll see how those come in. And then also the ARP funding as well. And then uncertain on the timeline for capital grant and ARP. We're planning to finish them next year, but we'll do our best and see how that goes.
So if you're just, put the bids out, went out for bid here, so are you hoping to do it this winter while people aren't on the lake, or what is the timeframe that you're looking at?
Yeah, so there's the two projects. The capital grant is work inside of an existing pump house that's out at the lake, and so we plan to award that and start the work as soon as possible, and it's inside, and they can do the work. The second piece, the ARP project, is in the lake, and so that work would be done probably about a year from now, late summer, when conditions are better to do work in the lake, not in the winter time. And then this final slide is a bit of an eye chart here. This is the detailed budget lines. This is a new budget format that we've used this year, different than in previous years. It was an attempt to reduce the number of individual lines, to simplify it a little bit. But it shows the revenue is about equal to the expenditures, and then has the ARP funding down at the bottom. Because it's such a big number, 2.1 million, we broke that out from the assessments. The assessments are about 320,000, so we separated those out. Can answer questions on that.
Has this been presented to the association?
We sent them a draft in July, and then we're presenting it this afternoon to their advisory board.
Okay. So you haven't gotten feedback?
We have not. They were generally supportive, the advisory board was generally supportive of where we were headed with this. There was, the ARP funding hadn't been confirmed yet, and they were eager to hear about that, and we're pleased to receive that. But we haven't had a formal presentation on it.
Josh, you haven't heard. You guys have kind of heard all the comments from them.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I was at their kind of community event they had a couple of weeks ago, and but one individual that didn't like it, but no, for the most part, a lot of folks said thank you for the work that the county had done and the process and how much we've accomplished. So yeah, so that was my feelings, was the majority of the people I spoke with came up and they were supportive of this, and really just glad to kind of see it that it's finally approaching the finish line. So it's been several years in the making. So.
Yeah. And then one more slide at the end, just a timeline for review. So there's advisory board presentation this afternoon. We'll also do a presentation to the flood control zone district open open house. And right now it's not scheduled, but looking to schedule that for later this month. And then there'll be consent agenda to advertise for the public hearing of this budget, and then a public hearing in October. Right. So then the second one, slides are up. Yeah, so this is the presentation of the work that was done by a board of appraisers that was hired, and it's somewhat of a long process. But the board of appraisers started about almost exactly 1 year ago today, the 15th of September, so a couple days shy of that. But and what this was an attempt to make sure to look at how the assessments were charged on properties around Newman Lake and make sure that it was fair and equitable. And this was a third-party board of appraisers. So these were hired by Spokane County to 3 appraisers, not from Spokane. They were hired to look at how the assessments were done and making sure, making some changes and then having a recommendation. So that's where we are today, is they've provided a recommendation and there's a public hearing on that tomorrow. And as a bit of background, there was 18 public meetings that happened over the course of the year, and there was an opportunity for residents to provide comments during those. At each of those meetings, there was also an online tool. Most of the meetings were done virtually, or I think all of the meetings were done virtually. And so there was an opportunity for people to have public testimony at each meeting virtually. And then there was also an online tool where residents could provide written comments, and that was available throughout the whole span of the review. So those comments are available, and each meeting was videotaped and is available. And we have a letter just describing those and providing a link of where those are posted, and those have been posted on the county's website. So we can provide that, just a memo of that information. Afterwards, I'll hand that out. And then, so the results of this was a couple of key pieces. One of them, the first one is listed there, is it removed split parcels. So the way the assessment was done previously was done properties that were in the front nearest to the lake, might be very long and skinny, and in several cases, the land away from the lake was excluded from the assessments, and so they weren't charged for the value of that property. And so this recommendation from the Board of Appraisers is to remove that split and look at the full value of that parcel. It changed the benefit classification definitions and expanded the definitions of what constituted water quality benefit. That's probably the main change, is it changed that qualification so that more properties would be included in the assessment. The third one is that it recommended use of a market value be used rather than current use. And so this would be a change from what we've done previously, so that the properties could potentially be higher valued, and then that would be taken into account in the assessment. I mean, that's actually still an outstanding question that we don't have to act upon today, but just to highlight that, bring that to your attention. The county has asked the Attorney General's office for clarification on that, and we're awaiting that response.
So when you say market value and then I see in parentheses assessed value, you're using those terms interchangeably?
Yeah, so the current use is the value of the land, and it might be reduced by some exemptions. So a lot of properties are reduced by forestry exemption, and this proposal would say that they are not then reduced, that they would be the full value. If it were to go sell, they might be worth more than retaining that reduction in value. So it would cause the property values to increase.
So I think, and Mr. Bradabo and I have talked about this, and so has Mark. What happens is the market value is usually the value that the assessor places on a piece of property. But the assessed value takes into consideration any exemption granted to that property. For example, we've heard in the past, some of the properties in Newman Lake are categorized as farm and agricultural. So they get a reduced assessed value. And so what the appraisers in this case are suggesting is, instead of allowing the properties to take the reduced assessment value, they all use the market value. So if you had a piece of property that the assessed value had been reduced because it's farm and agricultural, you couldn't take advantage of that anymore. So it has the effect of respreading, if you said, the assessment to all the properties within the boundaries. One other thing, Ben, that we need to be sure the board understands, there are the properties we're talking about are all within the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District. But there's two maps, one for water quality and one for
Flood control.
flood control. So you need to understand that, and he's going to be talking about that in a minute. But I think that's critical as you move forward.
Commissioner French?
So just help me with the clarity on this. So if I own 100 acres and I'm growing wheat on it, but I could come in and get more money out of that property by dividing it up into 5 20-acre parcels and selling it for residential development. Am I going to be assessed based upon the ag use that's existing, or assessed based upon the market value, assuming that I'm going to develop the property?
You ask a good question, Commissioner French, and let me say this. The assessor's office is responsible for assessing a piece of property in the highest and best use. And so that's what they're going to determine. But the issue would be, Commissioner French, is that we're concerned about here is if the highest and best use right now is farm and agriculture, just assume that's the case, you're farming it. But you've gone to the assessor's office and you said, you know what? I want to have my property classified as open space under farm and ag. And if it's open space under farm and ag, you get a reduction in assessed value. And so what the appraisers are saying is, board members, we don't want you to use the reduction in assessed value when you determine their assessment on an annual basis. We want you to use the actual market value. Commissioner French, I can't answer your question. The assessor's office determines the highest and best use of that property as far as the market value. So I apologize, I can't answer that. I assume he values it as farm and ag, but I could be mistaken. But the distinction here is, we have always been using market value, we've always been using assessed value in conjunction with allocating the annual assessments. If we use market value, that's a little different change. Mr. Bradabo told you correctly, you do not need to make that decision in conjunction with your hearing tomorrow. But that decision will have to be made before you assess all the properties within the district at your hearing held usually in late November or early December, sometime then. So I think Mr. Bradabo told you correctly, we've asked for an Attorney General's opinion on this unique issue. And we expect to get a letter opinion back, which Mark's staff will review and brief the board on. And the question simply is, in conjunction with assessing properties in the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District, to use the market value, which doesn't take into effect any exemptions, or to use the assessed value, which does. And so that's been a big issue we've been looking at for a long time, board members. We hope to have a decision relatively soon.
I just want to clarify, because here it says market value, and then in brackets is assessed value versus current use.
So that may be an error. So it's it might be an error. Somewhat confusing for me. Looking at properties, even just looking at specific properties, it's hard to find them that have a different market value from assessed value. And so it may be that that text is in error, but I'm not sure on that. So I apologize if it is.
Okay, so I guess and again, we don't have to do this today, but just making sure we get that clarified for the future is, are we using current use, assessed value, or market value?
We'll clarify that, Commissioner CUNY, so it's accurate and so it's not misleading. But the key here is market value is the value which you get assessed on your property without the benefit of any exemption or reduction in value. assessed value is actually what the assessor uses. And so if you have a historical property, then you get a benefit of that, and that's the assessed value, not the market value.
But I thought you said too, the assessed value is the highest and best use, which,
The market value is the
Close
highest
to
and
market.
best use. The market value is what the assessor does, and that's the highest and best use on your property. Before you get the advantage of any reduction in value because of some benefit you're involved in.
okay, yeah, I will look forward to the clarification.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Kearney. I apologize if I have confused you. That was not my intent.
But we are not making any determination on that at this point in time. That is when we get to the assessed value portion, not for the hearing on the budget.
Correct.
Very good, just to clarify.
The next item there is just a summary of the properties that are assessed, and so you see there's an increase of 42 parcels that would be newly included in the assessment for this.
And that's because of the removing the split parcels.
No, so those were already included. It's an increase in the area, and I have a figure here in a moment that'll show that where they've added properties that are benefited and then should be charged for it. And so that's kind of the biggest change on all of this, and I'll have a figure in a moment. Several properties had benefit class changes, 123, where they either went up or down to pay more or less. And then if we go to the next slide is the highest assessment, towards the bottom, the highest assessment increased, but the average assessment decreased. So what happened here is that it was spread out over the more parcels, and so the average assessment goes down, but some were increased on the high end. This represents the same assessment at the same value. Theoretically, if we were to assess them under the current, comparing last year's, and if we just remapped it with this new proposal, this is the distribution.
So there are going to be 40, I'm asking the question. So there are going to be 42 new parcels. And so I'm assuming that those 42 new parcels have not been paying any assessment in the past, and now they're going to be paying an assessment. And do you have any indication as to whether there's a willingness to be part of this solution, or is there pushback from those 42 parcel owners?
From the people we've heard from, that I have heard from, they'd be pushed back. They're saying they should not be included.
Okay. Okay.
And do you have a map?
Yeah, so if you go ahead, if you go 2 slides, we'll skip a slide, but to get to or go one more, sorry. The biggest change is the areas highlighted in red are where changes were made. And so for example, the one on the right figure, the upper left of that figure, you can see if you go a little bit further north on that, the red is where parcels were added. So they've kind of added at the fringe is largely.
Is the yellow what's new?
It doesn't represent new, but it is new. So it represents the classification of 30% assessment, but they're largely the new ones there, yes. So that one, and then further north on that figure, there's several, even further north. So yeah, those, you see that are up around West Newman Lake Road. Those were all added new. The ones on the right were added new. The example of the split parcels on this one, if you go down towards the south end, those ones there on the left side, those were parcels that they were long skinny parcels that the front was assessed to the east of the road, and now they were now unsplit, and will have an assessment on the portion of the property to the west side of the road. So this is the water quality benefit. There's also a flood control benefit, which is, if you go to the previous slide, this is fewer changes on this one. There's fewer properties that have flood assessment. The ones on the left, the blue on the left side of the right-hand figure is the split parcels again. And then to the right side, you see highlighted, those were newly added for receiving benefits from the flood assessment. So this was the assessors kind of taking a fresh look at which properties should be included or not, and also looking at what was defined as a benefit and were added into the both categories. One of the pieces that was added as a benefit for water quality is, and explicitly added, was view. So a view of the lake, and that we've received comments from residents that they don't think that's appropriate for them to be assessed because they have a view. If you go to the next slide. At the north end on the right-hand map, those residents have a view that's it's across the Mackenzie Conservation Area. They don't have direct access to the lake. And their comments, several of their comments have been that they shouldn't be included in assessments. They should not pay an assessment on water quality.
Is there assessment? You said 30%.
That is the proposed assessment, is 30%.
And then, and that's all based on these 3 independent appraisers.
Correct. Yep, so these 3, they went out, had meetings, split up the lake into different areas, toured, looked at the conditions, looked at market values and sales, and did an appraisal, and came to the conclusion that those properties should be added for receiving a benefit from the water quality.
That whole process was directed by the citizens out there were the ones that got the law changed and petitioned and all of that to do this have this assessment done, and knew what the assessment was going to be doing.
They knew it could change.
Yes.
They didn't know to what extent it would change, but yes, this was process driven by the residents of Newman Lake, yes.
And they had, were they part of determining what the assessors were going to be looking at
No, that was all laid out in the legislation.
in the legislation?
Right.
I believe Chairman Cooney, Commissioner
But
Kurtz
they
is
helped-
correct.
They helped with the drafting of that legislation.
Yeah.
Right. I think you are correct. What happened is the legislation provided for a mechanism for the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District property owners to revisit the assessment process. That process was initiated. The Board of County Commissioners then, as required by law, hired 3 appraisers. And that's critical in this case because these appraisers are MAIs, they're experts. And you did not select people that weren't experts in this area. Then as required by law, the appraisers held various public meetings and hearings, and Mr. Bradabo has advised you, all of them were open to the public. They accepted public testimony in each one of them. The property owners out there were advised of when the meetings were held, and they had the ability to have input in the final recommendation that is in front of you by the appraisers. And so the critical thing here is, Mr. Bradabo has provided you with a copy of the recommendation, which is on the screen, and you received a copy of it already. It's part of your record. And then you've also been given access to all the records of the appraisers. And the reason that's so important is the appraisers are experts. And as experts, their decision is afforded a little bit more weight than just the average person because they're MAIs. And they were charged with looking at the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District water quality and flood control and determining what the zone should be and what the benefit of each zone should be and moving properties from one zone to the other. They've done that. They spent a lot of time on it, as Mr. Bradabo has told you. And so tomorrow afternoon is the hearing where any property owner can come in and they can say, I don't like what the appraisers have done. I don't like my property being included in zone 5. I don't like the fact that zone 5 says my property should be assessed 5%. They have the ability to do that. And your job tomorrow is to listen to each one of these property owners who come in and object, and then make a decision on whether you agree or disagree with their assessment. And then finally, if you will, confirm whatever you want based upon this recommendation. You can modify the recommendation of the appraisers if you want. You can change it if you want after this public hearing. You don't need to make a decision tomorrow. You can continue it if you want to study the issues in a little bit more detail. So Commissioner French, I think that's kind of what we're moving forward on.
So let's say tomorrow, after the hearing, one of the commissioners decides, well, I'm going to change this. What does that entail? Does that open up the process all over again? Does that then re-engage because your whole budget then changes, or what does that decision entail?
The state law with respect to this issue, Commissioner French, provides that after you conduct your hearing tomorrow and you close the testimony on those people objecting, you have the ability to, and I'm going to read it, study the record and evidence presented, make such independent investigation as you deem necessary, and, Commissioner French, correct, modify, or to confirm the things on the map that you've just received. So, Commissioner French, from a legal perspective, once you receive the testimony, you can make the appropriate changes based upon that testimony and hopefully some comments from staff. You're not required to hold another hearing, a public hearing. Could you? You probably could if you wanted to, but I don't think you're required to by law.
Thank you.
We've already received, board members, and I'm looking at the clerk, I think at least 2 written pieces of correspondence with regard to maybe 3, and with respect to that. And Ben, I think what we're not sure, Commissioner Cuny, is how the board's going to proceed on this item tomorrow. Once Mr. Bradwell makes his presentation and you open up for testimony, legal counsel has suggested that when a property owner comes up to testify, I say, I'm Jim Amacio, here's my assessor parcel number, Mr. Bradwell will show it on the map, and then you'll see exactly why this person thinks it's in the wrong zone or it shouldn't be assessed this amount. And then after that person testifies, legal counsel has recommended to Mr. Bradwell that the board needs to take a decision on each one of the projects, each one of the assessments, if you will, the objections. Now, we don't know how many objections there's going to be because each objection may be different. I may be in a different zone than someone over here. So each property owner needs to get up, identify themselves, identify their assessor parcel number so the board can see it on the map, and then they can indicate what their objections, if any, are.
So you're saying that we need to agree or disagree with each property owner at that point in time?
You can, Commissioner Cuny, you can do it at the end of the hearing, you can do it at a continued date, but I think you're going to, I'm recommending, and I think Mr. Scarrett and I are both recommending that we have the property owner, when he or she comes up and they make an objection, identify themselves.
Right.
And then at some point, when you close the testimony, we take action on each one of those, and staff will be keeping track of them, who the speaker was, what their concerns were, so the board will tell us what to do.
Which is similar to what we've done previous years when
Yeah,
we're
we've had to do
setting
that.
the assessments under the old map too.
I don't remember us doing it
Yeah,
individually.
well,
We just did it
it's-
as a group.
No, we did it individually.
It's been a couple years since folks have come in for that. I mean, like during COVID, I don't think anybody came in to testify, but pre-COVID, yeah, the folks
That's
would
right.
come up, they'd say, here's my assessment, I ask that you lower it. And so then we would have to take a vote on each one of those requests.
It's almost-
It's been several years since we've done it, since anyone's come in and asked.
It's almost like the Board of Equalization has to deal with each individual assessment, and you have to make a ruling on each assessment. Yeah, it is
I remember
laborious.
doing it since
Well,
I've been.
Commissioner CUNY, you are correct. In some instances, we usually do it on each one. Sometimes we haven't, but we've covered that in the findings. But it's legal counsel's recommendation, Mr. McLean and mine, that we act on each one separately, board members, in some fashion, and staff will be tracking those for you. The reason this is critical is because once the board makes its final, it's called an order approving whatever you want to approve, a property owner has the ability to appeal that to Superior Court within a 20-day window. So that's why we believe we need to act on each one of them. And so we have a good record. And that's why we made a part of this record today, everything that the appraisers have done. Being experts, we have the ability to go back and look at that. If someone raises a question tomorrow, staff can go back and pull out what they said about that particular issue.
Okay, and then they had all those opportunities to talk to the appraisers during this process. So. Okay, and then are they limited to our 3 minutes or?
The notice of public hearing included your 3-minute notice in there, Madam Chair, just like we've always done in all your hearings. They can submit written comments to the clerk of the board before then, and we've got 3 so far. And as I say, the law makes it very clear that after you close your public testimony, you can continue it for whatever time frame you need for the staff to review the record and to comment on each one of the potential protests, if you will.
Thank you.
And then I was just gonna say, so to initiate, as prescribed by the legislation, to initiate the formation of the 3 appraisers, there was a petition where signatures needed to be gathered of the residents. And Ron, do you remember what percentage of the residents signed that petition?
70,
Of
all residents or what it passed by?
they gathered signatures.
Yeah, it was above, north of 60%.
Yeah, of the residents that live in the flood control district
Qualified
signed
petition.
to initiate this process.
And board members, the board members actually decided to fund the cost of the appraisers out of the general fund because they've been going on for so many years, instead of assessing that, if you will, to the members in the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District. And I think that was a commitment made some time ago by the board, and you followed through on that. And I think that Mr. DeWinkle, in a correspondence he sent you, thank you very much for picking that cost up.
And how much was that cost?
160,000?
We would expect that there will be quite a few people, Chairman CUNY, here to possibly share a protest one way or the other. But that's what the hearing's for tomorrow. And there's no rush on this. Remember, as Ben told you, the present assessment methodology stays in place until you adopt a new one. And I think staff would like you to adopt a new assessment methodology as a result of the hearing tomorrow and have it in place so you can apply it to the new budget when it's ultimately received by the board and approved by the board. Is that correct, Mr. Bradbro?
Yeah, that's correct. So we can, either way, this has been an ongoing process, so it would be good to bring it to closure and then either way, and then have the assessments that happens by the end of the year. So a redistribution of the costs and have that approved.
And when was the last time the assessments changed?
Never has.
We increased last year.
When the district was formed, the lines are remained the same.
Are you talking the map or are you
Map.
talking this?
To the individuals?
The methodology has never changed, Commissioner Keady, but the assessments go up and down depending upon the budget it adopts, as I recall. Is that a correct statement?
That's
Ben?
correct. So it went up, for example, last year, the total amount collected, but the method for assigning those costs to properties has not changed during. the district,
just
other
wanted to
than,
confirm that it was just kind of a normal, based on what the budget is, then you allocate it out based on the assessment percentages.
correct, and so this is changing those percentages, which hasn't been done.
And Chairman Cooney, I think Commissioner French hit the nail on the head. I think we've learned that some properties previously weren't included. Now they're going to be included. They're going to be paying a proportion of the budget. So therefore, arguably, the assessments for the other property owners will go down a tick, if you will, because you've got new people participating in the total budget. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Brent?
Yeah, correct, and so that's why the average assessment goes down, but the way that the calculation's done, some of them are going up.
Coming into this with green eyes, commissioners, I just wanted to provide two quick observations. One is this, there are some new properties getting in at that 30% rate. Those are probably likely unhappy about that, but actually a substantial portion of the change in the redistribution of the assessments is that southwest corner over there because of those long split lots. And those are high value waterfront lots that were only being charged that very small portion of the property on lakefront, not the full depth of the parcel. So that's actually, and those are at 100% assessment. So that's actually probably where the most change is, other than the ones going from 0 to 30.
And how much of a change are they going from, I guess, if you have one parcel that was at $100, now is it?
I'm not sure on that, on those split parcels of they were assessed on the value of the immediately adjacent to the lake, and then it adds in the parcels across the street. I'm not sure. Derek, do you have any thoughts on their change?
Some of them range between a couple hundred to up to $1,000 in an increase, but it'll, depending on if we stick with the market or the current use or transition to the market, that will also influence the overall assessment fees for those parcels. So it would likely be more.
And this kind of
There's
goes.
a chart in your handout that describes kind of the breakdown.
This goes to the, when we've had our public hearings and folks will come in and show, one of those long skinny ones will be paying like $120 a year, but the house directly next door, that when you look at the house, it's substantially larger square footage, but their parcel is very, very small, and they're paying like $1,400 a year. But because that house that has the acreage, we're able to spread their value along in some cases 10 acres, that drove their assessed value way, way down. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as Mr. Amacio said, we'll have the hearing tomorrow, and we'll be there to be able to zoom in onto those properties as people choose to speak, and we'll take notes on those and then be able to answer questions that might come up during that hearing.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, looking forward to tomorrow.
You're the one. I'm not.
I think you said that with like a little sarcasm there. Thank you all very much, because I know this has been a lot of hard work on your parts, so really appreciate everyone's efforts in getting us through to here, so I know.
This started when Shelley O'Quinn was in your seat. That's when this whole process started. It's been a long, long process.
Thank you. Okay, that is going to lead us to Jeff Morris and Arian.
So,
ARP update.
a few things to go over today. The affordable housing category opened last Wednesday. So that's $4.5 million. It will close on the 28th. So that's the currently open category. Other public health, which closed about a month ago, it's been scored. We're still waiting on some additional information from one of the applicants. So that one is still sitting there. And there's another applicant that might be moved to a different category versus public health, pending decisions tomorrow. So that one is still just waiting. The nonprofit category, which was open most of August, closed last Wednesday. To date, we've only had a couple categories that went over 10 applications, and they were mostly 12 to 15-ish. We have about 45 applications from the public health.
Public health or nonprofit?
I'm sorry, nonprofit. I saw Heather Arnold and Grants had them all printed out. It's about 3 inches of paper. So they're roughly grouped into 6 categories. You have arts and venue type projects, small business support, childcare, housing, services for disproportionately impacted populations, and workforce development. And roughly, you're gonna have about the same number of applications and ballpark same dollar request within each of those 6 subcategories. Some of these might also better fit in other subcategories. So part of the scoring process will be both how do they score against the RFP and possibly bringing some suggestions forward to the board to maybe move them from nonprofit to a different category that's a better direct fit. Per the ARP rules, the board has that authority, and the rules suggest if there is a better category that you would be, it'd be a good idea to put it into that better category. So it's gonna take us a little while to score. We did increase the scoring group from 4 to 6 people for this one, just because there are so many applicants to get a bit more diversity of thought around the scoring process. It'll also be a little bit different, you know, when we're scoring a water and sewer project, it's very much an apples to apples, where there'll be a little bit more fruit basket upset here when you're looking at childcare versus the arts versus workforce. So we'll start that process Wednesday of this week. We'll be commandeering this room with our reams of paper. Then moving forward, one other thing to bring up, we had 750,000 in the nonprofit category. We expect, as with other categories you have gone over, we expect this one likely to possibly go over significantly. Tomorrow on consent, you all have a resolution in your packet. You will see a resolution to award another $39 million worth of funding. This is just taking it from the over 101 million into categories. Just to quickly go through the document, the bullet points at the bottom of page 1, top of page 2 is just the history of where we've come from and where we currently are. The affordable housing category that is currently open is the last RFP from your first round, with the exception of some broadband match, so we're waiting for state and federal grants to be able to use that match. Starting in the middle of page 2, under the ABC, you will see under the public health broad category, category 1.11, there's $5 million directed to community violence interventions. That is a category, we have a DV services that came under other public health. This would be an example. DV might fit better under 1.11 versus the other public health category. That could be an example of a change, but we don't want to make any of those awards until the 1.11, if approved tomorrow, is actually opened. So that could be scored against any other applications that would come in for that category. Going down, section B is all under the negative economic impacts. You'll see the 12 million, the category title, Strong Healthy Communities, Neighborhood Features that Promote Health and Safety. Broadly speaking, this is outdoor activities in response to the COVID situation. So parks, plazas, neighborhood features that provide outdoor space and recreational opportunities, or not even recreational, it can be a plaza, a sitting area for just outdoor spaces. So that's 12 million there. 2 million to the category Aid to Tourism, Travel, and Hospitality, fairly straightforward. And 5 million to Economic Impact Assistance Other. And so that's a bit of a broader category that a lot of different things could fit in. 5 million in that category. Going down to letter C is the broad infrastructure section. And this one, instead of just opening one subcategory, this one, the resolution would open all categories 5.1 through 5.18. So that's essentially everything under infrastructure except for the broadband section. So it's all your water and sewer, and all the subcategories there within. That's a $10 million ask. We've had those categories. We've received a lot of applications. We know there's a lot more need out there. So that allows them to choose the exact category that's the best fit instead of trying to weave into one of our more specific categories. The bottom one is the only category that's not a new category. You'll see it's an increase from 5 million to 10 million, and that's for the broadband match. We're still, the state broadband that we expected to open in April, and then May, and then June is now October, early November. So we are still waiting on that one to open. That's up to 25 million. We'd need 10% as a match. And then we have the BEAD funding, Broadband Equity Access, and I always forget the D, coming down through federal agencies. That one's a 25% match. So if we got another 25 million there, you see the match need goes up. And so we're hoping to be able to use that 10 million because of it being, we're bringing a lot of additional tens of millions of dollars to the community. So that's the new section. If you turn to the very last page after the signatures, you'll find attachment A. And that is just a wrap up. If this is passed tomorrow, it would include everything that has been awarded to date, as well as the new funded categories. This rolls up to 89,111,000 and change. So if you do quick math in your head, you're gonna think there's 12 million left. But because we expect the nonprofit category to go significantly over by possibly millions, I'd say half of the categories awarded to date have gone over, anywhere from hundreds of thousands to $1.5 million. And then you'll also recall ARP has a 10% overhead that goes to the county to pay for all of the, not only the RFP process, but the years ahead of monitoring that will need to be done. So when you award $1 million, there's an additional 10% that comes to the county to cover those costs. So between the 10% and nonprofit planning on going over, other categories possibly going over, I would say you're more in a $4 to $5 million fund balance, if you want to use that term, for future distributions, depending what applications come in. So any questions, thoughts, or feedback? This document is currently on consent for tomorrow. We verbally talked about it the last couple of weeks. This is the first time it's in print.
And you don't know how much requests were on the nonprofit side so far?
Do we have that total roll up yet?
What the total requests so far on, not the, I mean,
Is it
fund them
money?
all? Yeah.
So we have 750 allocated. We are easily, everyone included at, if you funded everyone, 20+ million. So, I mean, we're gonna have to do some reviews on that. All good asks, but some that, we'll just have to assess on priorities, and also those that don't have any matches to go, not matches, additional revenue streams that are looking to ARP to fund things in totality, just kind of seeing how they align with your allocations today, but we are many fold with 750,000.
And the first pass will be the legal pass. And then, that's the easiest one, it's cut and dry. After that, it gets to be, it's gonna be challenging. Any other questions before I toss it over to Arian? So Arian was gonna talk about ARP home and then a broadband update, a lot of broadband activity.
Yeah, just a second before you go. I mean, I guess that's my concern, is just with knowing how strong that came in, kind of how we're allocating out these other dollars. If we needed to allocate more to that.
That category.
Yeah, that category, which could reduce
Well, Commissioner, if I might add, that actually, I did want to touch on, that amount directly reflects to the document that will be before you tomorrow. So that actually opens up almost the lion's share of categories that some of those in these kind of genres could actually fit better into. You know, they're obviously in the nonprofit area, but they might fit better into this other category. So I think before we review that, we might want to then let the team kind of first sort them by category, look at that on how they scored as a nonprofit, or not unlike what Jeff mentioned about the domestic violence proposals, actually fit much better in a different category before we assess any other movement.
Because looking at these, like arts and venues, I've not been through it yet, but arts and venues, broadly speaking, you can see where they might fit under the tourism, travel, and hospitality. These small business support, workforce development, it makes sense that some of those might also fit under the economic impact assistance better. Housing might be better under the one that's current right now. So when things are scored, of course, there's yes and no for possibilities of responses. There's also defer until these other category RFPs are opened, and then score them against the other things that come in with that category. And we have done that with multiple applications to date. Like we have some broadband stuff that's in a deferment pending other funding that could come through the state or feds. And we've done it in other categories too. So some of the nonprofit overage that goes over the 750 could end up in some of these other categories. I do expect the 750 to probably be a much bigger number. And so there is that $12 million difference still that could cover a lot of that.
You're not restricted by proceeding with this second tranche allocation. It actually allows you to have access to sorting things you don't now. What you can do is you can update this second tranche resolution if you find that you want to award more in the broader non-topic category holistically rather than further sorted out. So that those resolution updates can go both ways. We just can't tap into the other categories until this resolution proceeds. So that's kind of how that works.
Correct, but I guess I feel like we haven't identified how that breakout and where those other groups can go, what other classifications they can go into. And so I feel like we're just kind of getting quickly on this, because once we approve this and we put out the RFPs, we can't then reallocate unless there's extra funding left from those RFPs.
You can
Not
reallocate
necessarily.
as soon as they can be compared, but you cannot reallocate until that RFP is closed. So anything that's in the nonprofit would have to be just, if you decided not to fund it under nonprofit, but under a different category, there would be the 3-week period of the RFP being opened, a week to score, a week or two of action. So you're looking at a 4 to 5 week minimum delay to be able to do the comparison. If this were to pass tomorrow, we could get all these categories opened, and then that timeline of at least a month would start later this week.
So, but if we chose to reallocate, how I guess that's my.
Once it's opened, and you, just as there was 500,000 listed for water storage, and you guys awarded 1.4 million, you awarded all 3 applications that came in. You can do the money and dollar amount switches. You guys have the authority to do more or less after the applications come in. But we just have to get the categories open and put out the RFPs to free you up to make those monetary decisions.
The other thing on the nonprofits, and because we're in an open bid procurement, we can't go into too much detail, is there is still some clarification out in the community about what ARP proposals are eligible for it. And we have run into some proposals that were fairly large in number that the proposal entity didn't understand those types of things. And as I've gone through these, I'm seeing we have some of those in that same category. And so just because the dollar amount might be 12 million, that doesn't mean 20 million is actually even eligible for ARP funding.
No,
So just to
I
not think-
understand that. I guess that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's my question or concern, is that we're kind of forcing this resolution when we haven't really identified everything as to what was even eligible. Because I know we said that's the first step, and then see of what is eligible in that to truly identify where that should be sitting versus in that nonprofit, to know with potential funding. So that's all.
Somewhat related to that, and this is a kind of a verbal first touch. I know Scott has mentioned this, that we are preparing in conjunction with the budget office a resolution related to our revenue replacements. And it is in the guise of a direction of priorities. So it's not doing distinct number values like this resolution, but indicating that we are looking at county building and safety improvements that we have spoken about here related to some certain campuses, and the enterprise resource planning, or the ERP system for holistic replacement, as some of our intended uses for that revenue replacement, knowing that obviously if things come in under, there's other discretionary things, but that is another thing that we're working on, that in this coming week we will prepare for you to review, so that Gary has that as part of the budget package coming forward. So they'll kind of braid in together. Anything else on that? As Jeff noted, we are continuing to work with other departments on other home and home compatible funds, whether that be ARP or ARP compatible funds, ARP home, and then also some rental assistance funds that has some new allowances through the grants department. Knowing that we're getting short on time, I do want to just touch a few things on broadband, unless there's other questions on ARP as a whole. I will save the story map overview. I sent the link out last week. That is really a valuable tool. It's that digital divide inclusion. Using some base data from Purdue University. They were so impressed with it, they're actually highlighting that on their website along with Spokane, so that's quite exciting. And the underlying data is being used for our curb study, which the final draft will be ready at the end of this week, and we'll be providing a copy of that with you. Jeff did mention some other broadband grant sources, one of which is a federal NTIA middle mile grant. That is actually one that is open. It is due by September 30th. It has a 30% match, for which our broadband ARP match category is eligible to use. The background of that is this is a federal grant that was initially offered for first right of refusal to each state. For a variety of reasons, our state broadband office chose not to be the lead applicant, and as a series of reviews, NOAANET, which is the Northwest Open Access Network, it's kind of a quasi-municipal corp consortium thing, is the lead applicant on that. Their total amount that they will be asking on behalf of the state of Washington is $100 million. They feel very confident in how this is coming together. The Spokane portion of that at present is between 9 and 10 million. That is right now focused primarily on the same area as the curb study, which is South Spokane County and eligible areas of the West Plains. What mid-mile means is you can think of it as kind of, it's called backbone or the highway. It's the big pipe that gets you to the ability to connect to people's homes, but does not allow you to connect directly to people's homes. So it gets us almost the way there on those really big items. It does not in any way diminish our standing for future state broadband asks. All it does is allow us to expand to the home connections and maybe some other areas that we were kind of leaving as secondary. With that, they have requested that Spokane County be a partner and would technically be a subrecipient of this funding. And a requirement of that is a memorandum of understanding. I have a draft of that I'm still working through some details with legal. I'll be asking Heather Arnold just to review that from a grants perspective. But what this MOU would be is to signify our participation, confirmation of the broadband match money, and then how it would articulate the role of NOAANET, the role of Petrichor, and the role of Spokane County, primarily in pass-through type of mechanisms. And it blends nicely with what's in the beginnings of formation for the possibility of a broadband public development authority going forward. There is an open access requirement for this federal grant. So again, it does reiterate that that is a federal focus while there's still conversation at the state level. So I first wanted to let you know about that opportunity to confirm there was interest by the commissioners in pursuing this $10 million, up to $10 million, and prepping that MOU for an upcoming consent agenda. And that definitely kind of rolls into some of the local broadband office conversation that I know Commissioner Cuny is aware of.
So then with that, is that, then we don't need to be requesting as much from the state if they get this and can do that backbone?
That's one option, yes. What it does is it does allow us to tap into other needs that we weren't considering before because we needed it to be funded before we knew about this opportunity. So we still, as Jeff noted, have 25 million roughly that could cap our ask. Do we want to look at some other things in getting to that 25 million since we found funding for some of our original scope through this other opportunity?
And when is this grant due?
This federal grant is due September 30th. We have all of the content pieces near completion. I've been meeting quite regularly with NOAANET. The last, I would say, requirement for us to participate is this MOU that we've been working on. So their goal is to have pretty much everything finalized by this week, knowing that your consent letter couldn't go on until next Tuesday.
And with that, I mean, are we, so then the expectations we're providing the 30% match?
For our 9 to 10 million only.
And that can come out of ARP?
Correct, because it is part of the overall ARP Act, it is eligible for the broadband component. So NTIA, IIJA, BEAD, they're all underneath this umbrella.
Yeah, so we have about 3 million of the IIJA match. Of the 10 million you would have in there, if this passed 5 million currently, 3 million of it-ish.
We'd phrase it as up to 3 million, just because we obviously don't know what we'd be awarded, so we don't want to commit more than we're awarded.
Right, and so this is part, so with the study coming out, this is helping us get to what our needs are within that study.
Correct.
But I wouldn't say you necessarily want to reduce the other 25 million ask.
Correct.
We weren't able to do everything.
Right.
Within that, so this allows us to actually get $35 million worth of work done if we could get both grants.
Yeah, since the other one's capped at 25.
And this is what's called a mid-mile category. It opens us up to ask for things that the state money is more flexible for, that we were kind of prioritizing, and that kind of fell below. Now this has been taken care of. Some of those lower priority things can be added back into our state consideration.
When do they know if they can get that grant?
The federal one, right now, it closes the 30th. I believe by end of year, we'll have notification with final contracting by the 1st of the year.
Are you guys good with us moving forward, pursuing this?
Yeah.
So we will work on that, and then Commissioner Cuny is hosting her office, a WASAC call related to the state broadband office open access. And there is, you had a copy of this a few weeks ago. This is the generalized letter from Petrichor, really encouraging
And
engagement.
it's actually just the virtual assembly that is
Yeah, it's just,
happening today.
sorry, the virtual assembly. I would like your thoughts, Commissioner Kuhn is very versed on this. If Spokane County wants to either sign on to this letter or write their own version of this letter in support of open access, particularly related to forthcoming Washington State broadband. Open access, once again, doesn't prohibit private partners, but it assures that public entities must be a part of the ask and the ownership construct for the first 25 years. And so that's something that the first round of broadband funding is a little bit in jeopardy because of this unknown. And some counties that received awards in that first 130 million have actually had private partners start to pull out and wait, and they may just cancel those first awards if open access is no longer required and apply again. So some counties are really in the lurch as this determination is still under conversation. So we'll circle back again on this after the open forum, after you've had a chance to read it, and we can decide if Spokane County wants a formal position on this. That's all I had.
So I think what we're doing is, I think with the virtual assembly today, seeing how that goes with all the counties, to see what their thoughts are. I've heard from several commissioners across the state that are not happy. You know, there's definitely a couple of counties that are, their projects that were already, they were awarded money, that companies are waiting now to see if it's gonna go open access or not. And so have delayed that, those projects. And so it's becoming a real quandary that Commerce has decided to now look at changing what they're doing. And when they sent the survey out, they sent it out to about, I think, 50 people, not all counties, a lot of the providers. And so I think as a lot of commissioners, we were just, wondering why they've chosen to do that, when we've got, billions of dollars coming from the federal government down to states and to organizations. But I think people would like to have choices instead of not having a choice. So that's why open access is critical to a lot of people and thinking and having that competition versus not having competition. So.
I think an important message too to counties is that ownership and expertise are actually two different topics. And that was, I think, a little confused by maybe some conversations with those that wanted it to stay in the private sector. Counties can have ownership of the asset and still engage with private sector companies that have expertise, but that doesn't at all negate or mean that open access has to go away. And that's part of the education we're hoping will occur.
This would be on our letterhead.
Counties have chosen to do it either way. So this is the letterhead itself. I would agree with you. I think Spokane County would definitely want to have it on their letterhead, but not all counties have chosen that.
Okay. Because I think it's our position,
I would agree. I would agree. Especially because we are now the PUDs that actually have Petrichor on their behalf. Maybe that would be a different story, but correct, this would be our letterhead.
So this will come before us next week.
Yes.
So we have time to.
I wanted to listen to the discussion today to see if we wanted to massage it at all.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Then next up we have Kathleen.
I will be printing out on larger paper. This is our ARP status board, so you guys can have all that. It's an internal document just of where all of the different firms are. So I would have passed it out, but we all would have.
And Kathleen, Arian's gonna move off.
Yeah, you guys can stay here. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for joining us, and I'm gonna let you introduce your guest. I know you work with us, but I apologize that I don't know your name, so.
Okay, so I am Ryla Garrick. I'm a community development specialist too with the Housing and Community Development. And I'm just here to briefly brief you guys on the 4 documents that I'm gonna be taking to you on the 20th. The first document is the CAPER. The CAPER is a public hearing document that's,
Let's see, which, do we have copies of all these documents? I just.
you should. Yes, so the first one is the CAPER. It's a consolidated annual performance evaluation report. And it's probably the heftiest document out of all of these.
This one?
Funding?
Let's see, no. It starts with goals and outcomes. Do we have this one? It's a PR or CR05.
So we have 2 documents.
Oh,
Neither one of them that.
that thick. This is probably the thickest one, starting with the CAPER.
Okay. So just a second, Gina's looking.
Is this it?
That's it?
It is.
There we go.
So, again, the CAPER is going to be coming up for a public hearing on the 20th. Annually, it's updated. It shows our accomplishments for the year. The CAPER is a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requirement, which is used to measure CDBG and home activities performed by Spokane County's HCD division. And the one provided to you for this briefing is for the program year of 2021. Depending on the nature of the activities undertaken by the subrecipients, the CAPER combines this information to determine eligible activities, activity categories, and the national objectives. The Spokane County HCD division collects monthly subrecipient progress reports to track accomplishment measures towards meeting outcomes during the program year. The information reported in the CAPER includes goal outcome indicators, the consolidated plan unit of measure for meeting the goal, and the quantity of each measure the subrecipient has committed to meet. The other 3 documents are the citizen participation plan, the request for proposal, and the funding policies. These are going to be heard on the consent agenda, and they also are updated annually. The citizen participation plan, starting with this one, is the Spokane County HCD division with the Board of County Commissioners approval has developed and followed a citizen participation plan that provides for and encourages citizen participation, which emphasizes participation of persons of low or moderate income who resides in low or moderate income neighborhoods. The CPP ensures that minorities, disabled people, and non-English speaking residents have the opportunity to participate in plans, activities, and programs.
So we'll give you a chance to take a breath.
Take a breath.
And then Commissioner French has a
So-
question.
It was emailed to us.
On the cover sheet here, you have listed for the city of Airway Heights, Mayor Sonny Weathers. Mr. Weathers is no longer on the city council or mayor. He's moved out of the city. So if it's going to be the mayor, it's actually Larry Bowman.
Okay, I
It
can
should be
address that.
listed there. And if it has to be a representative, that's the mayor, it's Mr. Bowman.
Thank you for showing that.
You're welcome.
Was that the only one with the mayors on the sides?
Yeah, Mayor Grover is Cheney, Cooper is Medical Lake and stuff, so the others, to my knowledge, are fine. I mean, the others are in the other 2 districts, so I'm assuming
Yeah.
those are listed accurately. Yeah, so I think Sunny is the only one that needs to be changed.
Okay. And I'll let our secretary know to be able to make that change.
And then just quickly, like under Medical Lake, Mary Cooper, I don't know why 107 is after her name.
Oh, which,
It should just probably be ticked down.
oh, I see, on the participation plan. Okay, thank you. Did not catch that, but I appreciate your keen eyes.
Oh, so it's 107 West Lake Street,
Oh,
so it should be
so
dropped down
Right down there.
for the address.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Should I move on to the RFPs? I mean, I guess I should check with you on the CAPER. Was there any questions or concerns, comments on the CAPER? It's a lot of information.
Yes. So I think at this point, I have not had a chance to read it, so.
Okay.
I apologize for that. but
No, that's fine. If you
Out
do
of
go
town.
through it, I certainly can kind of help explain what some of the pieces are. And it's a fluid document, and so until we submit it to HUD, It will be changing because we have a lot of different departments contributing to the financial part, to the home department, the CDBG accomplishments. And so there's a lot of people that work on this and it's still being worked on. So there's a watermark that says draft on it and it'll stay draft until we get ready to submit it to HUD.
Okay, and when do you submit it?
It is due by 9/28, usually 90 days after the close of the program year, which is why this is 2021 and the rest of the documents are 2023.
And for the public hearing with all of you is a week from Tuesday.
That is on this document.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
It's handy, so like I said, if you have questions, please reach out and I can certainly clarify any information that's in this right now. Great. Okay, so the request for proposals, the Spokane County HCD Division releases the RFP each year to provide interested applicants with information on anticipated funding amounts, proposed activity descriptions, and program year guidelines. The RFP defines eligible jurisdictions within Spokane County that may apply for funding, which include the 12 cities and towns and unincorporated areas excluding the city of Spokane. As the national objectives of the CDBG program are to benefit low and moderate income persons, the RFP also outlines HUD outcome indicators for accessibility, sustainability, and affordability. The CDBG program must also follow the Spokane County Consolidated Plan guiding principles, which are all included in the RFP for demonstrating transparency of the Spokane County CDBG program. The RFP ties in with the CPP, the funding policies, and the 2020 through 2024 Consolidated Plan to provide information to interested applicants in understanding what Spokane County CDBG program is looking for in a proposal.
And just to clarify, the city of Spokane is not in it because they get their own individual funding.
That's right.
We get the funding for all the rest of the cities, as well as the unincorporated county, so that's why that happens.
And then with the funding policies, the focus of our Spokane County CDBG program is to fund activities that address high priority community development needs, meet all threshold requirements, conform to the consolidated plan principles, and propose achieving at least one program goal. The funding policies provide overall guidance and direction to applicants regarding the Spokane County Community Development Block Grant Program. Based on the allocation of the CDBG funds received from HUD on an annual basis, these policies set forth outcomes and guiding principles described in our 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan. They also include the estimated allocated amount to be received from HUD in the current program year. Based on previous program years, if not yet awarded, the timeline for the CDBG program year. They include open public meetings, public hearings, the activity selection process, eligible applicants and ineligible activities, low-income benefits defined by HUD, instruction on completing the CDBG application, as well as the location of documents on the Spokane County HCD Division's website and an invite to technical assistance workshops. So this concludes my information on the 4 documents for the consent agenda and the caper for the public hearing for the 20th of September. I'll turn my attention back to you, Chair and Commissioners, for any comment or feedback.
So I don't have any questions at this point on this. So on who's on the committee, so yes, so I think Sunny, he probably wouldn't still be staying on the committee.
Sunny Weathers.
Yeah.
The HCDAC.
For Irving Heights.
If he is on there.
Since he's no longer a council member or
He could be, you know, he could still be if the new mayor were to appoint him. We'd have to double check the current HCDAC roster.
and then just seeing Brett Lucas and Spokane, I'm not sure what he's representing. I'm on the.
That's on this list here.
Oh, that one.
No, on the committee list.
We can look and find out if he's still on there and, or if it's vacant and which area.
Yeah, because I guess that's just.
Yeah, it'd be better for us to have the current roster, we'll double check that against the current roster.
Okay.
Because it keeps all the correct people as well as the area that they represent.
Right, because if there's some vacancies, like in Millwood, someone's kind of more Josh's district now, but, I mean, let us know so we can reach out to get those vacancies filled before, the RFPs come back. Commissioner French.
Yeah, and for the members at large, you say north and south, but is, for instance, north and south of what? I-90, the river, Mason-Dixon line? I mean, I don't know what the demarcation line is to define north and south. And is that north and south full width of the county? So that would include cities from Liberty Lake to Cheney? Or are there certain areas that would include?
So we'll find out and see if potentially there might even be a map or something.
Okay, that would be
Yes.
helpful.
That'd be helpful, so we can help get those positions filled, because I mean, it's important for those committee members to be, there, as we know, these are important dollars that are getting distributed out into the community, and they're a big part of that. We rely on their expertise here, so I just want to make sure that we can help provide that.
Typically have a problem, it's usually the smaller little towns that when they have a vacancy, they're a little harder to get the mayor's attention to do a
Yeah,
reappointment. But we'll look at that for sure
Okay.
and get back with you.
And with broadband, we're much more engaged with, like Waverly and Latah than we have been in the past. So it's like, so I want to make sure that we're, we can help talk to them and say, hey, we need you to choose somebody to be on the committee.
I'm sorry if you mentioned this, on the HCDAC list, the roster here, under the jurisdictional line, one of them says vacant.
Yeah.
Where's that person from? I
We
missed
don't
it.
know, they're gonna.
Oh, you don't know? Oh, I'm sorry.
They're gonna go back and look at all those. So that way we can get.
I'm not sure that this is the most current version, so we'll review that and get you the current version and let you know which areas, if there is vacancy, and get you more information on the north and the south.
Okay, and then these will be, you said on the consent agenda, or not consent agenda, it's a public hearing.
All three documents, except for the CAPER, will be in the consent agenda as items. It's only the CAPER that is part of the public hearing.
So if we have any further questions, just get them back to you right away.
Yes, please.
Kathleen, what's the timing of the consent agenda for those three
9/20.
items?
All of them are on
All of them
9/20.
will be on next week.
So these will be at 9:20, and this will be a public hearing on the 28th.
No, the 20th.
It's
It
due
has
on
to
the
go to
20th.
HUD on the 28th.
Okay.
All of them are on the 20th, it's just one's a public hearing.
Thank you, sorry.
And I will not be available on the 20th, so Rilo and Jamie Gadd from our department will be listening and available to answer any questions.
Okay, very good. How do you pronounce your name and spell it again?
Ryla, Raila. It doesn't sound like how it's spelled, so I'm completely fine with that being pronounced. I've heard it every way you can, so no big deal.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate you
Thank you.
coming.
Have a good day.
You too. Scott, do you want to do?
Miscellaneous, yeah, I think Jim and Maceo might be coming over to touch on some TBA stuff queued up for tomorrow. I think the first one, Gary, do you want to cover some of the timelines for scheduling supplemental budget reviews and budget reviews with the departments?
Sure, thanks, Scott. As you know, we have some budget reviews by the departments to the board to explain their supplemental requests that they put in for their 23 budget. Tomorrow we have scheduled departments to come in from 9 to noon. We also have departments that are already scheduled for next Tuesday, the 20th, from 9 to noon. And then I am in the process of scheduling the remaining 8 departments that we've had for Monday morning, 9 to noon, and Tuesday, 9 to noon on the 26th and 27th.
hopefully that meets with the approval of the board in terms of their time frame. And then we'd like to try to keep open each Tuesday following that for either follow-up discussions and then conversations about any of the supplemental requests submitted by the departments on their capital. These supplemental requests that you'll be hearing from the departments now will be on their personnel and M&O budgets. So hopefully that'll get us a broader, bigger picture when they've presented everything to the board so that we can do a recalculation if the board desires to either approve or not approve or go anywhere in between with what those departments have submitted for supplemental requests.
Those dates again, Gary, beyond tomorrow.
Tomorrow from 9 to noon, and we've scheduled, and I sent out an email to that effect last week. The prosecutor at 9 o'clock, counsel for defense at 9:30, public defense at 10 o'clock, risk management at 10:30, superior court at 11 o'clock, and district court at 11:30.
And then the dates, the next
The
series of,
would be September 20th, and at 9 o'clock, we would have the sheriff. At 10 o'clock, we would have Doug Chase with Parks and Recreation. And then at 11 o'clock, we would have Tony Hall with purchasing.
it's next Tuesday,
Correct.
9 to noon. Then you're working on 2 more for the following week, right?
Yes, and that would be from 9 to noon on Monday during this time slot for the 26th, and the same time for the following day on the 27th. And the 8 departments I still have yet to schedule would be HR, the clerk's office, assessor, medical examiner, detention services, juvenile services, scraps, and facilities.
I know, on Tuesday, the 20th, I've got an appointment at 10:30, so I'll not be here for all of it. That's not on my calendar that we were meeting at that point, so.
Would we want to do on the 26th? We usually have our briefings for the board for the upcoming consent agenda items. We prefer to hold those still at the 9 to noon and then do afternoon of the 26th for department budget reviews.
So I already had that we scheduled a 2 o'clock budget workshop on Monday, the 26th.
26th is already on there?
Yeah, I think when we were kind of initially setting up budget workshops.
Yes, we do.
So would that be better for the board in terms of just blocking out the afternoon of the 26th for department?
I think we talked about it a while ago, some of these budget workshops, and we already had that blocked out on Monday at 2 o'clock.
Would
The
1 o'clock
26th.
also work? To start at 1?
We could.
But GSI that day, but you can always start without me. 2 is a better time for a start.
I don't have that. So you're saying Monday, the 26th at 2 for budget workshop?
Yeah.
I mean, I have it blocked out for executive cabinet meeting just because we meet Mondays and Tuesdays, but I didn't have it specifically as a budget, but that.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
kind of when we set up the initial ones.
So can we call it from 2 to 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, and then we're still good for the Tuesday morning, the 27th, from 9 to noon.
Yeah.
Great, I'll get those scheduled that week with the remaining 8 departments. So ready to go.
What was the one that you said you weren't gonna be able to make?
The 20th. I have a 10:30 appointment, so I gotta leave ahead of that.
So are we canceling the morning meeting then? I'm fine if we want to. I'm asking a question on the campaign.
It's probably beneficial for all three of us to see it.
Yeah.
Can we, a suggestion would be, Gary, for the ones you're working on next week, on the Tuesday morning that Commissioner Keating has a conflict, since they already have a hold on the calendar for the afternoon of the 19th.
Right, because we had a budget workshop scheduled for the 19th.
I can do that.
I don't know why it's on my calendar, but it's like it's scheduled.
Yeah,
as a
I've got
budget
it on
workshop.
mine too. We do have, is the 19th also our due diligence call?
It is.
So our due diligence call with the Underwriters Bond Council is at 3 o'clock on the 19th.
What if we start earlier on the 20th? We start at 8 AM.
Oh. Well, but she's gotta be gone
I gotta
somewhere
be
by 10,
10:15,
So if we
could
go
at least
8
get
to
2
10, we get 2 hours then.
on the 20th. If we start at 8
8 o'clock,
yes.
10.
10.
Okay.
And then if we did Monday afternoon, could get the other one in on Monday afternoon,
On the 19th?
on the 19th.
Casey should be here too.
So,
For 1 hour.
utilize 2 to
Set up
3
and
on
stuff.
the 19th if we need to. Gary?
Sure, let me check with the departments and see their availability and sign them up.
Okay. And then Gary, the documents that the commissioners and the departments will have in front of them, in addition to their supplemental budget requests, are gonna be their, the general fund roll-up that they can all see, which you've sent to them, and as well as the kind of 5-year budget and actuals for each of the departments as well, which the commissioners all have in their budget binder.
Correct.
Right, so give you a chance, and then any other documents that you want as well. So you have in your board package from last week, you should have a budget binder as well, Commissioner Cuny. It'll have in there all the general fund roll up, and then every single department, it has a multi-year look at their budget versus actuals. So it gives you an opportunity to look at trends, ask questions of the departments as well, and as well as the supplemental budget requests that they have.
So what the departments will do is they've been instructed to present their arguments as related to their supplemental requests, and those supplemental requests are part of that pre-ring binder information that you have.
Yeah, I know Brenda has it. I just got back from town late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, so I have not had a chance to look at that yet.
Okay.
Just one more thing, I just wanted to mention for the board's information that you're aware that our IT director, because of personnel problems, had to resign last month. And so we're looking for another IT director. And so far, Ashley, I think we've got 18 referred candidates out of HR.
Yeah, there's been 1 or 2 that actually probably are worth calling. So been looking through those as they come in. And then there's some internal interest this time as well. So kind of exciting to see. So it's funny you brought that up. I was actually going to time with you today and figure out interview schedule when we could get those going. But we do have a couple of really solid candidates that I think might do well for us. And Ryan, who did leave us, did have some personal stuff that came up, but in the future, if it works out, we might be able to snag him at some point, but for now, we'll transition where we need to. Kevin Norris has been working in a kind of go-to capacity, and he's been doing a great job. So if you see him, give him a thank you and a little bit of an encouragement. He's got a lot on his plate right now, but he's been doing a really good job for us in the interim.
Okay, anything else on budget, brothers? Jim had something he wanted to touch on TPA.
Thank you very much, Scott. Board members, I wanted to remind you that tomorrow afternoon, you have 3 items on your agenda dealing with the tourist promotion area. Item 2A is a public hearing on an intention to establish a TPA. Item 3A rather. Item 3B is on adopting an ordinance which formally establishes the TPA. And then item 4 is the interlocal agreement between the city and the county to form a TPA. I wanted to let you know that the city of Spokane is going to execute their interlocal agreement with the county to participate in the TPA, I'm told this afternoon. So tomorrow, as we move forward in our hearing process, they will be on board depending upon what you do. I have prepared motions for each of the 3 items, which I have provided to the clerk of the board, and she will provide those to all board members tomorrow. The lodging businesses in the proposed TPA area by an 78.1% are requesting the board form the new TPA to include the boundaries of the city of Spokane and the unincorporated area of Spokane County. City of Spokane has 33 lodging businesses within its boundaries. Spokane County has 3. The other entities which originally determined to participate in the TPA have opted out. They included the city of Cheney, the city of Airway Heights, and the city of Liberty Lake. So the new TPA, which is the subject of our hearings tomorrow, board members, is only the unincorporated area of Spokane County and the city of Spokane. So hopefully I have a very short PowerPoint presentation, Madam Chair, to address all 3 items when you get to item 3, and then I will turn it back to the board to elicit public testimony on each one of the items separately. And then I have, as I say, prepared proposed motions because it's a little bit confusing, the hearings we have to hold in this particular case. And of course, the board can continue the hearing for a decision if you want. We have until October 18th to get the information to the Department of Revenue to initiate the new TPA so we can start collecting the revenues as of January 1st, 2023. So I will be presenting this item tomorrow and I will be available to answer any questions that the board may have.
So, do you know whether Northern Quest was invited to participate with the TPA or not? Because technically they're inside the city of Airway Heights, so if Airway Heights said no, but they're a separate sovereignty, so were they given the opportunity to participate?
Commissioner French, you asked a good question. The Business Spokane did have separate conversations with Northern Quest. They were invited to participate. They said they weren't, but they were going to continue to look into the issues, what they were told. So they've been very, I'm going to say cooperative, Commissioner French, in this regard.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that at least got an invitation.
Exactly right. And Commissioner French, as you pointed out, they are separate entities, so they're a little different than all the cities and towns. Right. And one further thing, as the board will recall, this petition by the lodging businesses could have been presented to the city of Spokane with 33 lodging businesses, or Spokane County with 3. The lodging businesses feel very comfortable with how Spokane County over the last 17 years have administered this, the TPA. So that's why they submitted to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott, for letting me update the board.
Okay, and the last one is there's a couple letters that have been requested to thank the retiring Superior Court Judge Harold Clark, as well as I believe a citizen, Frank Gebhardt, who have served on the law library for many, many years. And I believe this is a request
from the, we just talked about at the committee meeting doing a thank you, and then it's come that they were like initially asking for a proclamation. I said, in this case, it'd be better to do a letter, a thank you letter from the board, not a proclamation. This is my first seeing them, so I'd like to make sure that we have the years of service in there, that they, so I would like to make sure that this is a little more tailored specifically to each one of them.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, my goodness, the letters are awfully wordy. I mean,
Yes. I think we can come up with a little.
that's a joke.
It's just thanking them for, they've been on for
I don't
a
have
long
any problem
time.
at all with that.
And I think,
More text in the header.
Yes. yes.
Well, I mean, it's over 20 years and this is what I get, a paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I'm fine with writing them both letters of thank you, for their service. I think that's great.
absolutely.
Do we, where's our attorney? Do we need a motion or can we just do a head nod since it's just a thank you?
I think since we'd all be signing.
Signing
Yeah, we'd have to see it, so, Madam Chair, I would
Which then I
think-
need to open it up for public comment to take action.
But do you want me to make the motion first or after?
I don't know.
Yeah, let me get a motion on the floor and then they can have something to comment about. Madam Chair, I make a motion that we authorize the drafting and signing of the letter and other than an open vote meeting to Judge Harold Clark and Frank Gebhardt for their years of service to the Spokane County Library.
I will second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you very much for writing thank yous. Notes other than an open public meeting to be signed by the commissioners for Mr. Frank Gebhardt and the Honorable Judge Harold Clark. So I will open it up for public testimony for anyone wishing to testify on the motion that is before us. Second call for anyone wishing to testify. Seeing none, a third and final call, and I will close the open public testimony and look to my, we've already made the motion. So any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I think we'll try to update this afternoon, because I think I've got a meeting. I think there's a meeting today, but I think this is gonna get delayed. So, so we can have an appropriate thank you. Okay.
That's all the miscellaneous. I've got, Mark's got two executive session items for pending potential litigation. Is he on?
I'm covering for Mark for the rest of the day.
Casey will be gone.
Okay. So would you like to speak to what those?
Yes, so
and who you want in each of them and how long each of them?
yes, the first one is regarding pending potential litigation. We'll have the executive management team, Dale Anderson with our office, Doug Chase, and Kiefer Stensing with our office. They're coming in now, and myself. And the second one is going to
How long
be
will that be?
15 minutes probably. And then the second one's going to be just me for 15 minutes.
And purpose?
Purposes for legal advice.
I believe it was.
Oh, and Scott
pending-
Simmons.
Yeah,
Yes.
pending a potential as well.
Yeah, pending potential litigation as well, yes.
For 20 minutes.
20 minutes, I think.
Yeah, including the,
Executive management team, Scott Simmons, and anyone else, and the commissioners.
And you'll be the only.
And I'll be the only legal counsel.
Certainly.
I was just letting you know, I got GSI today too, so
Okay.
I need to get out here for that.
Okay.
it's a total of 35 minutes.
Yes, if you need to be. Okay, I'll make a note of it. Okay, so we are going into executive session. The first one will include the executive management team, all three commissioners, as well as Dale Anderson. Well, you stated the people. I'm not gonna go through it because we've got several people, of which then that'll be for 15 minutes. The second one will be again for potential litigation, which will just be the executive management team, the three commissioners, and Casey Evans as our attorney. Thank you. It is now 11:09. And so we'll be going into executive session. We anticipate for 35 minutes. We'll say that it starts at 11:10 to give us that minute to get us going. and then we will adjourn for the day. Thank you all very much, and we will see you back tomorrow.